Welcome back to our daily devotional. Today we are in the book of Ezra. Ezra, the scribe, the priest of Israel. And it's an interesting situation. So where our text for today picks up is chapters 4 through 7. And there's a conversation going back and forth. Ezra was sent back to help rebuild the temple after the Persians they conquered Babylon, and later they let some of the Israelites go back and rebuild. And there's a new king, King Artaxerxes, and he is like pumping the brakes on wanting to let the Israelites go back and build. And so there's letters, there's scrolls passed back and forth, and ultimately Ezra says to Artaxerxes, "Hey, look, your former administration let this happen, and so, or it told us that this can happen." And so King Artaxerxes goes and looks in their archive, in their records, and finds, sure enough, one of my predecessors did say this was going to happen. And so in chapter 7, he writes this letter to Ezra, and he has changed his mind. This evidence of one of his predecessors really does change his mind, and he goes so far as to say, basically, if anybody tries to stop this from happening, let them be killed. Even his own people. And so he takes this very seriously. And there's a part towards the end of chapter 7 where he talks about, he says, "Now I, King Artaxerxes, order all this to happen." And basically he talks about how, he's like, why should we bring condemnation from the God of Israel down on ourselves? And he says, give them silver and gold, and give them the materials that they need to rebuild their temple. And so I think that's pretty interesting, because how many kings who are not Israelite kings have we seen do this kind of thing? Not many that I can recall. Not any that I can recall. This is like the first non-Israelite king who's actually smart, who realizes, hey, I don't want to have any qualms. I don't want God to be upset with me. So let's just do what these people are wanting to do, rebuild the temple of God and give them our blessing. And so that's exactly what he does. And so they go and they rebuild the temple. And he also allows whichever of the Israelites that are still kind of in captivity, whoever wants to go back to Israel, they can go. So this is another great thing that is happening. The people who were captive are now getting to go home, are now getting to rebuild the temple. And then we see at the end of chapter 7 that they get to have the Passover meal together. They get to celebrate the Passover together. And so all these things that are happening, these are things that God had promised them. And it took a while. They were in captivity for a while. They had to go through some stuff for a while, but God kept his promises. And more than that, as we know, they would continue to break the covenant of God, but God would still continue to uphold his promises. They would go another 400 years towards the end of the Old Testament, the intertestamental period. They would go 400 years without hearing from God. But God would still keep his promises. And that's the grace of God that shows through time and time again, is even when they're in a good place, the people mess it up, but God's grace still abounds. And so we see that here in the book of Ezra. We will still see that in the little bit of the Old Testament that we have left. And we will see that a lot in the New Testament. God's blessings on the rest of your day.